Hey! So, I am going to discuss MLB's second team all decade in this video. Hit that like button below. Subscribe to the channel and comment below. Give me your thoughts on, the selections, who you would have thought should be on the team, stuff like that. It's like I said in the first video, there's not really a right or wrong answer. It's all your perspective. Do you prefer 2 or 3 really good years over 10 good years? Or I don't know. There's all kinds of ways to judge it. But what else do I want to say? There was something else. Whatever. I'll figure it out. So, getting on to the team. It's at catcher we have Yadier Molina. At first base we have Joey Votto. Oh, that was the other thing. If you didn't see the first video, go watch that, because some of the guys you may be wondering about why they're not on the list, they were probably on the first list. So, it's both MLB.com lists. So, and I gave an explanation as to how the list was populated. I don't know. So, like I said, Yadi Molina at catcher, Joey Votto at first base, Robinson Cano at second base, Nolan Arenado at third base, Troy Tulowitzki at shortstop, Giancarlo Stanton at outfield, Bryce Harper also in the outfield, and Jose Bautista in the outfield. David Ortiz is the DH. And then your starting pitchers are Madison Bumgarner, Jacob deGrom, David Price, Steven Strasburg, Corey Kluber, and your two relievers are Kenley Jansen and Wade Davis. So, that's it. I am going to talk about the selections. Like I said, I'm not here to really I'll say things as they come to my head, and whatever pops up I'll talk about, but I'm not gonna really judge these lists too harshly. Like I said, there's no one way to do this. So, Yadi Molina, he's been around for a while. His first season was in 2004. So he's one of the elder statesmen. He's been in the league, 16 seasons? And he's been very solid. He's known for his defense, but he's not going to hurt you with the bat. He's a good offensive catcher. He has his down seasons offensively, but he's a good defensive catcher, and that's what a lot of teams look for in their catchers. They want a defensive-minded catcher, and any offense that the catcher gives them is a plus. So, I guess it's He's started to come into a little power this decade in the 2010s. So that's why you sort of see some higher home run totals. But to start off the decade, he wasn't doing anything with the bat, power-wise anyway. He had a 262 average, 329 on base, 342 slugging, which, I mean, that's no power. He had 6 home runs. I mean, he probably would have hit a few more because he only played 136 games, which, although, I mean, that's pretty typical for a catcher. You know, they usually sit once or twice a week and, you know, to give their knees a rest, especially in the weeks that don't have off days. The American League catchers usually play if they can hit, they usually play more games because they play the days they're not playing catcher, they play DH. So like a Gary Sanchez but I can't really think of another catcher. Uh, yeah, there's really, I mean, I guess maybe Brian McCann. Maybe that's the guy you go with. Uh, but there's no honorable mentions on this list, so you know it's after the first 2 teams. That's it. So I don't know, but then in 2011 he comes into a little power. He hit 305, 349, 465 with 14 home runs. Then the next season was his lone season, crossing 500 slugging. He had a 501 slugging percentage, which is probably his best year, 2012. He hit 315, 373, 501. So, and he had 22 home runs that year, which I think you could easily say was his best offensive season. And, you know, he's an older catcher now, so last season was not great. I mean, it's still good for a defensive minded catcher. He had 270, 312, 399, which is respectable for, you know, with 10 home runs. So he's not hurting the team offensively, but he's not really contributing much. You know, that's like a replacement level player offensive line. And, you know, at this point, most of his value comes from defense and being a team leader, which is valuable. But I'm not sure if he would be in my top 2 catchers for the year, for the decade. You know, there's Brian McCann, like I mentioned. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I guess Joe Mauer could be in contention. So, I don't know. But either way, it's not a terrible pick. So, moving on, first baseman Joey Votto. Now, I mean, there's no, you know, Joey Votto deserves to be up there. Burst onto the scene in 2007. he only played 24 games in 2007. And I mean, it doesn't really matter. 2010 and on is what we're worried about right here. But I mean, the guy consistently hits, I mean, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 7 out of the 10 years he hit over 300. He walks a ton. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 seasons with a 400 plus on base percentage. And he hits for power. You know, multiple 20 home run seasons in 2007. In 2010, he had 37 home runs. In 2017, he hit 36 home runs. So, I mean, he's consistently been one of the best hitting first basemen. I mean, another player that comes to mind is Paul Goldschmidt, maybe. But really, other than that, I mean, if you want to go with an older player, maybe Adrian Gonzalez, but I'm not sure how many of his best years were in this decade. So, I don't know. But you can't, like I said, Joey Votto's definitely one of the top first basemen of the decade. And then second base is Robinson Cano. So this is the second baseman I thought of for the first video because it just struck me as a little weird that he wasn't selected because, you know, he came on the scene in 2005, and I remember when he came on the scene because, you know, he was a long-time Yankee, and he wasn't very heralded as a prospect. He wasn't one of their top prospects, and the Yankees didn't have a very good farm system back then. So he wasn't considered, you know, like, I don't know. I don't remember exactly where he was, but he wasn't one of the talked about prospects. But due to injury, he had to come in and start at second base. And he really just took off from there. He never looked back. And in 2010, he actually had probably one of his best years. He had 319, 381 on base, 534 slugging with 29 home runs. So, I mean, that's ridiculous. You know, and then he's followed that up basically, you know, ever since. And I mean, he's getting older now. He's in his, I think he's 35. Maybe he's going to be 36 next season. And, you know, one of the reasons the Yankees didn't sign him was because he ultimately commanded a 10-year deal, which pays him into his 40s, early 40, you know, 40, 41. I'm not sure. I think the last season is when he's 40. I'm not entirely sure. But so the Yankees let him go. He went on to Seattle. He continued his career. He continued his all-star hitting. His first season in Seattle, he had 314, 382, 454. Which is just, it's typical Cano. And then, so, then before last season, he was traded to the Mets. And the Mets really just, they're not, that's another thing to talk about. I don't really want to talk about that, but he really struggled a lot last season. He's still hit for power, not on the home run front. He only had 13 home runs, but he also played in only 107 games. So he was injured, but he also only hit 256, 307, 428. So he's definitely in the twilight of his career. But he's definitely one of the best, if not the best, second baseman of the decade. There's no questioning what he did. Really from 2010 to 2018. So, but so third base we have Nolan Arenado of the Colorado Rockies, Rocky Mountain High. So, Arenado burst onto the scene he didn't really burst onto the scene. He came up in 2013, played a full season, 133 games. But he only hit 267, 301, 405, which isn't really anything. He only hit 10 home runs, which, for Colorado, that's nothing. And really, in baseball, that's not much of anything because that's like defensive-minded, like non-hitting guys hit 10 home runs. That's. And in 2014, he didn't really show. He improved, but not by much. He hit 287, 328, 500 with 18 home runs. But he did play in less games, so, you could say those 18 home runs should be more like 22, if you're comparing it to his first season. But then in 2015, he hit the ground running. Still not great in the on-base department. 287, 323, 575. So, still a little to be desired in that department. He did hit 42 home runs, which even for Colorado, that's impressive. And then in 2016, that's really when he started to take off. He had 294, 362, 570. So that's like the typical all-star player. And then, last season he was ridiculous. He hit 315, 379, 583, which, is just crazy good. he hit 41 home runs again. And, since 2015, he hasn't hit less than 37 home runs. So, one of the, I guess, given that he's only had 5 really good years, I have to look at A-Rod's numbers, but I think A-Rod had 5 or 6 really good years with the Yankees. So, I don't know. It's kind of hard to say. Maybe it's recency bias. That could be also. It's that just guys remember the guys who were stars recently. So, I don't know. But nonetheless, definitely a candidate for best third baseman of the decade, or second best, because he's on the second team all decade. So for shortstop, this is an interesting one because it's Troy Tulowitzki. And while Troy Tulowitzki's a stud, he's another one who, he sort of, his career was kind of curtailed by injuries. So he doesn't have a very long, he only came up in 2006, and then he only played 25 games. But in 2010, he hit 315, 381, 568 with 27 home runs, and he was amazing. And then, the injuries really started happening. He was injured in 2012, but it didn't really hurt his performance because in 2013 he played 126 games, which isn't quite a full season. It's more like 75% of his season. But he managed to hit 312, 391, 540. Or no, that's 2013. Oh yeah, 2013. What am I talking about? But then in 2014, he was injured again. He only played in 91 games, but he still performed great when he was on the field. 340, 432, 640, which, is ridiculous. And then he gets traded. So he splits 2015 between 2 teams. He plays in 128 games, so he's a little banged up. He misses some time, but he's still a good offensive player. Not great. Only a 337 on base, 440 slugging. Not what you would typically see from him, I guess. When he was in his prime. And then his last full season was in 2016, or semi-full season, where he played in 131 games, but he only hit 254, 318, 443. And then in 2017, he wasn't good at all. Played in 66 games, so he was barely active. and he only hit 249, 300, 378, which is just not good. And then the Yankees picked him up to start the season, or in 2017. He missed 2018. And then the Yankees picked him up before the 2019 season, and he only played 5 games. So, I mean, it's a little strange for him to be in. There must be a better shortstop this decade. I mean, Elvis Andrus comes to mind, maybe. Not great, but I mean, shortstop's not a real deep position. I mean, right now it is, with guys like Lindor and Correa and Javi Baez. But other than that, so I think there's got to be something. So in the outfield, we have Giancarlo Stanton, who, I mean, he's another one that came in perfectly. And his career started in 2010. He had played in 100 games his first season, so not quite a full season. But, it's very rare that a rookie comes up on day one and plays the whole season. Usually they get called up mid-season as an injury replacement and so on and so forth. And I mean, he was touted as the next Babe Ruth. He hasn't quite lived up to the expectation, but he's still very good. He's not going to hit for a ton of average. We'll see. He hasn't been the epitome of health throughout his career. I mean, his career stat line is 268, 358, 547, which is really good. It's just not what people were expecting. And I mean, I can't really think of another outfielder off the top of my head that is more deserving. A couple of the outfielders who would be deserving are more recent call-ups, in the past few years, so they're not really all decade. So, he'd definitely be in the conversation. Next up, we have Bryce Harper. So if you remember, if you're not familiar, I'll give you a brief back history of Bryce Harper. So Bryce Harper was a high school phenom. And, he could have been drafted in his sophomore year. That's how much hype and how good he was. So he ended up going to junior college and getting drafted after what would be his junior year of high school. And rather than going through high school and waiting an extra year, he decided, my living's going to be in baseball. I'm going to do this and get to playing professional baseball faster. So, I believe he spent like 1 year in the minors, maybe a little more than 1 year. But he came on to the scene in 2012, much anticipated, and I think he was drafted in 2010. So like the rest of the 2010 season and 2011. And then he came on to the scene in 2012, played in 139 games, so he was probably called up a little late, maybe. I don't really remember off the top of my head. But he hit 270, 340, 477 with 22 home runs, which, I guess that's what you would expect from him. That's all you could expect from him for his rookie season. I mean, he did have 18 steals to go with that, so that's the other thing. And then, but I mean, he's kind of disappointed because he's another one who hasn't exactly been healthy his entire career. He got a reputation where he's too aggressive because he would sort of just run into the outfield wall trying to catch a ball, whereas people would criticize him saying, like, shouldn't do that, like he should be more cautious. But I don't know. I mean, I can't really, I mean, you want your players to play hard and go all out. I do get, like, you want your players to not be reckless, but I don't know. So in 2015 was probably his best year. It was definitely his best year. He hit 330, 460, 649. I mean, that's a Mike Trout level year right there. He hit, he had 42 home runs that year with 38 doubles. And, I mean, and then in 2016, he followed that up. I mean, this is the thing. Like, he's not really consistent, I guess you could say, is that he hit 243, 373, 441 in 2016 with 24 home runs. He did, however, steal 21 bases, and he only played in 6 less games than in 2016. Than in 2015. So, and then the last 2 years he's played a full season, but I mean, his average hasn't been of what you would expect from, a consensus number 1 pick. So it's just at a year younger than anyone else. So in his first year with the Phillies, last year he hit 260, 372, 510 with 35 home runs and 15 stolen bases. So, he's still hitting for power. And, I mean, you can get away with low batting averages when you hit for power. So as long as he hits for power, that's good for him. the bigger question with him is health. But, I think I'm not sure if there's really other outfielders that you can point to. I mean, maybe a guy like Curtis Granderson comes to mind, who probably should be on one of these teams. But to replace who, I don't know. So next up, we have Jose Bautista. Now, this is an interesting one because Jose Bautista kind of, struggled for a long time. And really, his first good season, when he burst onto the scene was in 2010. Toronto picked him up. I believe they picked him up off waivers. I think that's. Am I mixing? Because I know David Ortiz was. The Red Sox got David Ortiz for but I believe Bautista was too. Maybe he was traded, but it was either way. Toronto got him for nothing because until 2010, he wasn't great. In 2010, he had 260, 378, 617 with 54 home runs, 124 RBIs, 100 runs. So, and even threw in 9 stolen bases. So, and he played in 161 games. You can't ask for much more. I mean, you could ask for a higher average, but, at that point, you're just nitpicking. And then, he continued that throughout the decade, really. I mean, in 2011, he actually managed to hit 302. I'm not sure how that happened. But, it probably had something to do with luck. And then he didn't really slow down until, you could say 2016, when his batting average finally dropped below 250. In 2016, he had 234, 366, 452. And in 2017, he had 203, 308, 366. And then the Blue Jays were done with him. He's just not get whatever you can. So in 2018, he hopped around with 3 teams. And he could only manage 203, 348, 378. So a little better than 2017, but not enough to make a team want to sign you. I mean, I guess you could argue he still would have been useful for a team. Teams were probably deploying worse players, but he was also getting up there, and maybe he wanted, at some point these guys want to retire and just not think about it anymore. So he, I mean, I guess, you have to put him up at the top of the list in contention. I'm not sure, like, he's a guy who Curtis Granderson could probably replace. I'd have to look at Granderson's numbers for over this decade just and see what he did exactly. So next up, the DH is David Ortiz. So this is a guy I mentioned in the first video for DH over Nelson Cruz. And really, I mean, when I think about it, Cruz and Ortiz are really the only true DHs, that have been around this decade. I mean, others are like Jason Giambi, but he's not this decade. So, and he's also an elder statesman. And he played from 1997 to 2016. So he had 7 years in this decade. And, he's the guy I was mentioning earlier. He sort of was nothing. He didn't really do much of anything. For the Twins, he was okay. He had a couple of good years sprinkled in. But the Red Sox ended up getting him in 2003 for nothing. And he just took off. So in 2010, he ended up, he started off the decade hitting 270, 370 on base, 529 slugging. He had 32 home runs. So yeah, I mean, it's this, intentional walks. So yeah, that's typical David Ortiz right there. And then he even improved on that. In 2011, he hit 309, 398, 554. And then he improved on that, hitting 308 or 318, 415, 611. So, that I guess you could call it. I mean, even the next year, 2013, that's 309, 395, 564. Those 4 years are probably the best 4 years of the decade for him. Although you could also count his last year, 2016, as, he hit in 151 games, he hit 315, 401, 620 with 38 home runs. So, you can't really argue. And like I said, there are really only two standout two full-time DHs that you would even consider. So maybe I'm missing someone, but there's not really. I mean, I can't. Let me know in the comments. Maybe there are more. But so yeah. Moving on to pitchers, we have Madison Bumgarner. I mean, what can you say about Madison Bumgarner? Guys that one of, they say there are like top 10 aces in baseball at one time. And Madison Bumgarner was definitely one of them. He came up with the San Francisco Giants in 2009, but that was just like a September call-up because he only played in 4 games, 1 start. So you don't even count that. But so his career really started in 2010. He had a 3 ERA in 111 innings pitched. And that's, typical of first year full-time starters is, there's like a scaling where they play certain games, and he also only played in 18 games, so that's why also. And I'd say he probably pitched like 50 or so innings in the minors that season. So, then you see his numbers. He has the reputation of an innings eater, and in 2011, you see why. He pitches in 204.2 innings pitched, and he has a 3.21 ERA. So, that's sort of Madison Bumgarner right there. And in 2013, that's really where he took off. From 2013 to 2016, he had an ERA under 3 each season, and he pitched, over 200 innings each season. So, in 2017 and 2018, he was still an ace, or, maybe not a true ace. I don't know, however you define a true ace, and, but he didn't pitch a lot. He pitched 111 innings in 2017, 129.2 in 2018. And then last season, he pitched 207.2 innings. So he was back to a full season, but he also had a 3.9 ERA. So he's probably going to need some type of Justin Verlander magic to, maybe he has to recreate himself a little. But, he just signed a big contract with the Arizona Diamondbacks. So he's moving on from San Francisco. So we'll see how he does. But he's definitely one of the 10 best starters this decade. Next up, we have Jacob deGrom, who, there's not much you can say about him. He's been amazing. He's only, he came up in 2014, so he's only been around for 6 seasons. But, with pitchers, it's, like any position, really. It's hard to be pitchers even more, because pitchers are very volatile. So, with the quality that he's produced over the 6 seasons, like, he should definitely be in consideration for top 10 of the decade. And he probably is in top 10 pitchers, starting pitchers of the decade. you know, I can't really think of guys that were better. I mean, there's, like I said, a lot of like a guy like CC Sabathia comes to mind, but a lot of his really good years were before the decade started. So, you know, I don't know. Like I said, it's all about how you construct these lists. But yeah, I mean, so for his career, he's had a uh, a 2.62 ERA in just over 1,100 innings. Which just means like, you know, he's really good. It's really what I mean. There's nothing else you can say. He's also crossed 200 strikeouts 4 times. So that's another thing, like with guys not, guys not going 300 innings anymore. So, or even much over 200. Like, you know, it's very rare you see guys get like 220 innings. So, I mean, there's not much more to say. He's definitely deserving of being in the conversation. I think he's solidified a spot. All the other guys were mentioned already. So, next up is David Price. So, I mean, this guy, there's not much to say about him. I mean, with the exception of last year, he's been really good. In 2010, at the start of the decade, his third season, well, really his second season, he had a 2.72 ERA. So, right there, that's in 208 innings. And then, I mean, he's, aside from 2017, where he was injured, and that's, if you look at it, that's sort of where things started to go downhill for him. I mean, in 2018, he bounced back and he pitched in 30 games, 176 innings. But like I've said before, the game's changing and managers are more inclined to limit a starter to 2 times through the batting order. So, they face everyone twice, and, I mean, the better pitchers stay out there, but, if you're struggling, they tend to pull you. So that's probably what happened, because he only missed a couple of starts, which could have easily been like, we're just skipping you. And then last year, he was not good. He had a 4.28 ERA in 107.1 innings pitched. So, but I mean, I don't think there's any arguing that for the decade, he deserves to be there. There aren't many pitchers, starting pitchers, who have done what he's done. for like these lists. I don't know. Yeah. So he definitely deserves to be in the conversation. Let's put it that way. So next up, we have Steven Strasburg. Strasburg came onto the scene in 2010. He is another one who was a phenom coming out of college, which he came out of San Diego State, and he was the consensus number one of his year. I believe he was drafted in 2009. And then in 2010, they drafted Bryce Harper. And I mean, there's not much more to say. Strasburg came onto the scene. He pitched in 12, he started 12 games in 2010. And unfortunately, he had a brutal injury his first year. And that limited him to 5 starts in 2011. But since then, I mean, after that, he had 30 starts and 34. He's not the healthiest pitcher because after that, he has 23, 24, 28, 22. Last season, he had a full season pitching 33 starts. But he has a career 3.17 ERA with almost 1,700 strikeouts. So in 1,438.2 innings. So he strikes out a lot of guys. But, I mean, I don't know. It's the question of maybe do you prefer guys how much do you weigh consistency and health and being able to pitch 200 plus innings a year? Because he's only pitched 200 innings in his career twice. So we'll see. But he's definitely in the consideration just because when he does pitch, he's really good. But yeah, and like I said, I can't really, off the top of my head, I can't think of any other pitchers that have been around for the decade. I mean, there are other pitchers, that are, I mean, actually someone well, I'll finish this off. So next up is the last starting pitcher on the list is Corey Kluber. Now, this is another guy who, really from 2014 to 2018, so 5 seasons, he's been lights out. He's been a true ace, over those 5, maybe you want to say 2015 when he had a 3.49 ERA. Maybe he didn't perform like an ace, but given what he did the year before and the year after and the year after that and the year after that, he was definitely an ace. But it took him some time to get in to the swing of things. Started in 2011. Last year, he really struggled. He had a 5.8 ERA. So, this is the other thing. He was traded this offseason, and people were wondering why, including me. But you could kind of see why, because, maybe the Angels know, maybe Angels, maybe the Indians know something that we don't, he only started 7 games last year, so I don't know. Maybe they think maybe they just think he's not going to recover. So, but he's definitely in consideration. Again, it comes down to quality, whether you weigh quantity over quality, or however you view a top decade team, the all team of the decade. So yeah, the one person that jumps to mind that is left off is Noah Syndergaard. He's been just as good as Jacob deGrom. So, I don't know I don't remember when he started, but he's put in a bunch of years already. So, and looking at the list of guys who, they only have 5 or 6 really good years, and then the rest are just blah. That's why I would have liked to see an honorable mentions list of the players who received the highest amount of votes that just didn't make the cut. So, but rounding out, moving on to relievers, we have Kenley Jansen, the closer for the Dodgers. Yeah, there's not much to say about this guy. He's been lights out. Would I even say Mariano Rivera-esque? Maybe, but Rivera did it for much longer. Let's just put it that way. Let's just leave it at that. But so he came onto the scene in 2010. He appeared in 25 games, had a .67 ERA. There's not much to say about the guy. And in 2011, he had a 2.85 ERA. And then he took control of saves, of the closer role. And in 2012, he had 25 saves with a 2.35 ERA in 32 opportunities. So not great. He had 7 blown saves. But then in 2013, he had 28 saves and 32 opportunities. So he's getting better, and he had a 1.88 ERA, then 2.76 ERA with 44 saves, 2.41 ERA with 36 saves, 1.83 ERA with 47 saves, 1.32 ERA with 41 saves, 3.01 ERA with 38 saves. And then last year he struggled. He had a 3.71 ERA. He still managed 33 saves, but he also blew 8 saves. So, is he on his decline? Was it just an off year? I don't know. But either way, he's definitely the best or one of the best of the decade. Probably the best. Because you have to realize Rivera retired after the 2013 season, I think. Yeah, because he was inducted last season in 20, maybe 20, no, 2013, I think. So, as good as he was throughout he's the best closer in baseball of all time. But he only pitched 4 seasons in this decade. So, Kenley Jansen, I don't know. I don't know how he didn't make first team. Not sure. Maybe it's just a bias of him not doing well in 2019. Who knows? But so the last reliever on the team is Wade Davis. So this is another interesting one because he so Wade Davis came onto the scene as a starter, and his first 3 seasons he was a starter. He was a decent back-end rotation guy. In 2010 and 2011, he started 29 games. He had an ERA over 4 in both those seasons, but again, is not going to hurt you, not going to kill you. But then in 2012, the Rays decided to move him to the bullpen. And he appeared in 54 games. He had a 2.43 ERA in 70.1 innings. And he struck out, where is that number? 87 batters. So, that's really good. He struck out more than 1 in an inning. But then, for some reason, so he was traded to the Kansas City Royals, and for some reason, the Royals decided to move him back into the rotation. So he started 24 games. He appeared in 31, so they moved him back to the bullpen at some point. And in 135.1 innings, he had a 5.32 ERA, which is just terrible. I don't know. And it probably would have been worse if he didn't have those 7 relief appearances. Because basically that's pretty much a full game of no run ball. Maybe he allowed 1 run. I don't remember. I don't know what he allowed, but he probably had an ERA above 5.5, but then the relief appearances helped him out a lot in that department. So then Kansas City decided to move him back into the bullpen in 2014, and he had a 1 ERA in 71 appearances, 72 innings, and 109 strikeouts. So, I mean, that's crazy. He's throwing, he's striking everyone out. Yeah. But then in 2015, you could argue he had an even better year, where he had a .94 ERA in 67.1 innings, and he struck out 78. So again, like, it's crazy. And then in 2016, he had a 1.87 ERA in 2017. And in 2015, that's when he started to take over the closer role. And he had 17 saves, then 27 saves in 2016. Then in 2017, he had a 2.3 ERA with 32 saves. So, that's just crazy. And in 58.2 innings pitched, and he struck out 79. And then he started to struggle which, I mean, how much of that's him, how much of that is the fact that Colorado signed him to be their closer, and pitchers don't do well in Colorado. So in 2018, in his first season in Colorado, he had a 4.31 ERA, and then he had a 8.65 ERA in 2019. So I don't know. In 2018, he still had 43 saves, which was a high for him. But, coming with a 4.13 ERA. So I don't know. I don't know. I'd have to look at other relievers to see if, there are guys like, Sergio Romo. He's not a sparkly name, but he is what he is. He's been a consistent reliever, like a Mark Melanson. I don't know about Wade Davis being on this list, one of the top 4 relievers of the decade. And it's just not. I don't know. There's Jonathan Broxton, also pitched a bunch earlier in the decade. I'd have to look at his numbers. Jonathan Papelbon. I'm not sure how much was in this decade and how much was in the last decade. This is where it gets complicated. But yeah, so give me your thoughts below, and hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel there's going to be a couple of other lists coming out that I'm going to go over. And yeah, just like I said earlier, comment below, give me your thoughts on the list, and give me some names of guys you think should have been on the list. And especially since there were no honorable mentions, like, let me know, even if you don't think those guys should have made the list. Give me your honorable mentions too. But yeah, so that's it. Check out the unusefulidiots.com for all things unuseful idiots wise. I don't know. But yeah, so see you next time. Bye.